and welcome back to First Act, a podcast from Koshy's Business Builders. I'm Cess Busby.
I'm Adam Bubb.
And we're so excited to bring you the most intriguing origin stories of Australia's movers and shakers in business and life each and every fortnight.
That's right, Cess. So from the first jobs to the worst jobs, the big ideas to the mistakes made along the way. These candid conversations are a roller coaster of inspirational learnings, funny stories, and quite often moving musings on the challenges great people have faced on their journeys to success. If you enjoy it as much as we do, give First Act a 5-star review on your podcast app. Now, Cess, I'm such a fan of today's guest. Tell us about them.
Lisa Cox is an internationally respected disability advocate, author, business consultant and media professional. She's committed to improving the representation of disability in mainstream culture. She's a Stevie Award winner, a Social Changemaker of the Year Award winner, and in 2022 she was the Queensland recipient of the Excellence in Women's Leadership Award. Lisa's been guiding and leading frank conversations around the importance of representation and inclusion for years, and we're so excited to have her join us on the show today.
Hello. It's really great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Lisa, it is fantastic to have you on First Act. Now, we always start the show with a First Act icebreaker, a bit of a left field question. We expect a very honest answer from you. Your icebreaker question is, if you could choose 5 words to describe you, what would they be and why?
Caffeinated.
Yes, good word.
Truthful, grateful AF. It's not one word. Dog lover is 2 words, but I'm just going to go with that anyway. They're all 2 words.
I think you've done more than 5 there. I think we've got grateful AF, truthful. We have
brutally honest.
Yeah,
dog lover.
In order of importance or equal importance.
Yeah, there's a lot in there. I wear a lot of hats these days, and I'm a businesswoman first and foremost, but I'm also very, very grateful for the life that I have. I'm very, very, very grateful for that these days. So that's also part of my story, aside from business.
Now, Lisa, you've made a career out of communicating, whether it's through articles or books or your speaking engagements. So did you come from a family of communicators? Like, did you spend a lot of time around the dinner table debating politics or the latest issues or passing tomato sauce, whatever?
We spent a lot of time watching the ABC and things like that. So it was modest middle class upbringing, and we weren't allowed to watch Home and Away and those sorts of shows and things like that. We didn't spend a lot of time communicating about things like politics and what was happening overseas, but we always had a lot of appreciation and awareness of what was happening overseas. So even though we didn't talk about it, it was all around us. So I think that's where I have that. I always grew up with, even before my disabilities, that understanding of, okay, there's a much bigger world outside of my little world here where I am, because this is what's happening overseas, or this is what's happening in the bigger world.
So conversation was part of the day-to-day, like big conversations kind of?
It was, and I think, much to my father's, I won't say disappointment. I say that jokingly because I was always a little stirrer and a little advocate and fierce debater, debating something and advocating for something, and a fierce little feminist, and prior to the work I do now, advocating for disability.
So you studied communication and media when you were at uni, so was writing and a career in communication, was that always the plan?
Once I started at uni, yes. So way back before university, I wanted to be an occupational therapist. That's way before. And then I discovered this thing called copywriting. I was like, oh, you can get paid for that, being a creative. Writing, that's a job. Whoa. It blew my little 16-year-old mind, and I was hooked from day one. And That's all I wanted to do, and yeah, looked into the university degrees and everything what I had to do, and that was that. Went to uni, did my degrees, and started working in advertising. Loved every minute of it.
Do you remember the first thing that you wrote that you were proud of?
I remember the first thing I wrote. I wasn't particularly proud of it, but
Isn't that the story with writers? So we're just like, oh gosh, that's cringe.
yeah, no, it was very cringe. It was an ad. It was just an ad for a uh, parking in an airport or something. But I did have some interesting clients, a condom company, and all sorts of interesting fun clients, and there were national and international brands and European car companies and really, really great clients, but there were some funny ones as well, and also some cringy ones in there. So yeah, it was a lot of fun, but it was interesting, and nothing was ever. There was no monotony. There was always something different, a new challenge every week, and I loved that. There was no same.
Well, Lisa, on your Instagram, you have disrupting expectations as a tagline there. And that's certainly something you've done, from working across all of those different, from writing for just many different kinds of clients to what you're doing now. What does disrupting expectations really, really mean to you?
For me personally today, I'm disrupting expectations in the way people with disabilities show up in the world. So 17 years ago, just over 17 years ago, I acquired multiple visible and invisible disabilities. Wasn't supposed to live through the night. My parents were told they might have to turn off my life support, and a whole heap of other stuff happened, which I'm happy to go into or just be here for hours. But the expectations that were set for me as someone with disabilities were incredibly low, because unfortunately society sets this expectation for people with disabilities that, well, you're disabled, so you're expected to do this. And unfortunately, I had some really bad experiences when I tried to bring into the workforce, and was given jobs, and with no disrespect to the people who do these jobs, but they just weren't right for me. Really, really sort of entry level jobs, and so terrible. So after I sort of said, listen, I've got all of this experience, all of these years of experience and these qualifications, what have you got for me? And they basically put me in a corner and asked me to put paper in envelopes. And so there's, apart from the work I do now, working with advertising and brands, not just for myself, but encouraging other people with disabilities and society generally to look at the way they think about people with disabilities and change the way they think about the expectations of people with disabilities and what they're capable of. Because my background's advertising and marketing, I'm working with advertisers to disrupt the way they represent people with disabilities. So having those really often uncomfortable conversations, and I say uncomfortable because they're the questions that everyone's sort of afraid to ask. How do we do this and how do we do that? And but having those conversations about how to make disability visible in a non-tokenistic way.
So you did touch on what happened to you when you were just 24, and you developed a serious illness. You had a stroke, I think, that was caused by infection, and then that's right, kind of changed everything for you forever. And you had to learn to talk again, to eat again, to move again. But what do you think you actually learnt about yourself during that experience?
I learned a lot. I definitely learned that I'm a lot stronger than I ever thought I was. If you told me back in 2005 that, right, this is what's going to happen, I would have thought there's absolutely no way that I will possibly get through that. Mentally, I will just fall in a heap, and there's no way that I'll get through that and come out the other side and be happy, lead a fulfilling life. And there's no way, because all I had in my head were 24 years worth of stereotypes that had been largely put there by mainstream media and those sorts of things that told me that disability was pretty much bad. And even though I had friends in the community, family, those sorts of things, there's nothing that can really change that really significant part of my life that said disability was bad, put there by the media. So that's why I do a lot of the work I do now, working with the media and other industries to change that narrative for other people who acquire disabilities, or if that plus people who are born with disabilities, because that's, for me anyway, certainly not the case at all.
It takes a lot of sort of deprogramming, a lot of...
Oh, absolutely. A lot of unlearning.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people need to go on that journey. And I think, what was the stat? It's like 1 in 5 Australians lives with a disability. So that is an enormous amount of people whose needs are not being served, or they're not representing, who are potentially being backed into corners as well, like you mentioned of your work experiences, where people are kind of overlooking them, and they're overlooking experience and seeing one thing when they see a person with a disability.
Or even just last week, the family that were going to the little boy who he was Down syndrome, and they were refusing his visa because they were saying he was going to be a burden on society, and then the minister had to actually step in and approve his visa. It's like, surely we've gone past this, really. Like,
yeah, that's right. There's a large focus on only the social good, and it's the absolute merit in that point, but only the social benefits, and they're 100% accurate. But as a business person, I was like, well, I've spent enough time in boardrooms to know that there are some people who it's their job to only look at the bottom line of a profit and loss statement. We need to speak to them as well. So that's why I started addressing the financial and economic benefits as well of including disability in campaigns and in all of these things in media. And I think it's a really important point to make to business, that it's not just a nice thing to do. It's also really, really profitable. And that's often not an unpopular thing to say, but it can come across as a bit crass if you say it the wrong way. But that's just the I suppose the blunt way to say it. It can be profitable to business as well, because there are people whose job it is to just look at the ROI. And so let's talk about that. Let's talk about the $1.9 trillion of disposable income that globally people with disabilities have to spend. My legs don't work, but my credit card does, as I said in my recent TED Talk. So businesses need to be ready for that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, because there is this misconception that hiring a person with disabilities will come at a massive cost to a business, even though that's not the case. And as you said, there's the economic benefits of, speaking to these people who have been ignored and that are everyday Aussies that are just another one of us, and they're just like, they're not being seen, they're not being represented, they're not being spoken to. And the economic rationale to do that should just be a reason that businesses would consider that alone. That's a whole untapped market of consumers that they're not talking to. So, like, how do you think you can get businesses to wrap their heads around that?
To employ people with disabilities?
Yeah, and also to not ignore them as their customers, and
listen to their needs,
and to listen to what it is that they want, and how can we better serve the people in our community with disabilities. It's a big question.
It is a big question. Sorry. I'm just trying to process that. The answer sounds really simple. It's just to start listening to them, listening to their feedback and interacting with them, whether that is something as simple as, comments on socials, and using your consumers, people with disabilities, in your advertising, in your marketing. It's 20% market share that you're essentially ignoring. If you went up to a business owner and said, there's a 20% market share that you're essentially flushing down the toilet, they wouldn't hear of it. But that's essentially what they're doing by ignoring people with disability, because we want to be, when I say we, I can't speak for everyone with a disability, but people with disability generally want to be recognised and understood, but we don't see ourselves reflected anywhere in mainstream popular culture. And I'm not just talking about wheelchairs and prosthetics and healthcare goods, but we were buying, frozen foods and toilet paper during COVID, and all of the general stuff as well, FMCGs. But we need to see a greater diversity of disability representation across all forms of advertising, not just in healthcare, wheelchairs and prosthetics.
We also, one of the things that we hear a lot about, diversity and inclusion, are very hot topics right now in a lot of, and especially in corporate circles. It's very much, they have their D&I teams, and they spruik a good talk. Sure. They get the cupcakes out for special days.
Fuck, don't start me. Yeah.
they can throw special events. They can make everything look really pretty and make everything look good. Put something in their newsletter and go, look, we care. But how are we really going when it comes to being more inclusive in the workspace? Are these those sort of novelty approaches? Are they good for opening a door, at least?
Excellent question. Yeah. Well, first of all, it's a good start. If something's happening, it's better than nothing, but it's got to go further than that. We're trying, but one day of the year, it's got to go. You can do better. You can definitely go better. From an advertising and marketing point of view, consistency is one thing. So what drives me absolutely bonkers is when a brand or business, for example, decides that they're going to be, or D&I is going to be their strategy for the year, and they put out their campaign, like, look at us, D&I, one campaign, and that's it. And there's radio silence for the rest of the year. It's like, well, what happened there? It really needs to be consistent. And the thing is, consumers are becoming more savvy. They can see through this now, and they can spot brands that aren't authentic, and they can see that, well, that was just a one-off. We know what you're doing. And this isn't just disability, this is all sorts of minorities as well. So consistency is really, really important, but it is good as a start, but it's no excuse for not taking it further and making it an all year round thing.
Thank you, Lisa. We'll be back with more from Lisa Cox after this short break.
We are back with Lisa Cox. Now, Lisa, advocacy takes a lot of grit and get up and go. One thing I hear from other advocates, whether it's in the LGBTQI plus space, women's or Indigenous communities, is that it can just be exhausting carrying the torch all the time. How do you mentally reset and keep on fighting the good fight?
Yeah, it is. It is exhausting. But I suppose what keeps me going is knowing that when you do see changes and you see progress and you see things happening, no matter how small, you're like, excellent, we're moving in the right direction. But you're correct, it is exhausting. So what keeps me going, apart from the caffeine that I spoke about earlier, is just spending the very unglamorous, very quiet times with my dog and my husband on the couch doing absolutely nothing, watching terrible television or going to the gym, getting some endorphins, catching up with some friends, doing those sorts of things. It's a strange thing with me. I'd write as a way of calming myself. So sometimes writing is my means of relaxation as well.
Really? What do you
Yes.
write about?
Is it personal writing? Is it more personal writing or is it more...
We're talking beat poetry?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
You're going to rap out some spoken word for us now?
No, there's none of that. There's none of that. It's I do need the dopamine hit, I think. So sometimes it's work related, and sometimes it's more creative writing. There's definitely no beat poetry in there. Don't worry.
Are you a journaler?
Oh no! Oh gosh, no! No, that's not me. No, I'm not.
Hashtag grateful AF.
Oh fuck no! Grateful AF, but definitely not a journaler. I despise
Dear
that.
diary.
No! Oh no! No!
So your gratitude, yeah, because people talk about journaling, they say, this is what I'm grateful for today. This is my gratitude practice, all that sort of thing. So how do you get into that grateful AF state of mind if you're not doing journaling or meditation or those, so it's sort of more wellness cliched things?
Oh, okay. So I have an interesting relationship with the wellness space, because a lot of it, I've got an Instagram post coming up about this. Thanks for reminding me. I think a lot of it's BS, and a lot of that is because I love it to death, and I came from a place where I had inspo quotes all over the fridge. I was like, yes, mindset is everything. And then I acquired my disabilities. I'm like, oh, you know what? A gratitude, mindset is not everything, because that doesn't make my leg grow back or my brain injury disappear. It's not that simple. So it's kind of really interesting when you put, I think, and I'm generalizing a lot here, so I apologise in advance if you get any hate mail. But I think COVID...
We'll forward it on,
COVID
Lisa, don't you worry.
COVID made a lot of people aware that everyone who was out there going, oh, great, everyone just be grateful and just think positive. And COVID made everyone aware that it's actually not that easy to just think yourself positive when you've got actual proper mental health challenges, because it's not always that easy, if that makes sense. And I might be speaking out of turn here, but yeah, I'm a big fan of positive thinking, but I also know that mental health is a very serious thing that has to be taken seriously, and it isn't just a case of think yourself happy.
It can't be solved by an inspirational quote on the fridge and
Yeah, that's right.
a bit of deep breathing.
But, bad TV, really, really trashy TV can be just the remedy you need sometimes.
Yes.
It's not everything, but it is part of an overall holistic treatment of your
It's all about being holistic, yes. Some trashy TV will do everything.
Some trashy TV plus the gym plus dogs plus it's a big puzzle that you have to kind of piece together yourself, figure out what it is that makes you tick, isn't it?
Oh, that's exactly right. And good people, you've got to surround yourself with good people at the same time.
Yeah, so Lisa, since hitting that kind of restart button on your life, you've had some pretty incredible achievements, including writing 2 books, not journals, but books, real life books. You've started your own business. You've given keynotes all over the place. What have been the main challenges that you've faced as a business person and as an entrepreneur?
So the biggest challenges I face are not my disabilities per se, so not my wheelchair, my prosthetic leg, my low vision, those sorts of things, but they tend to be social attitudes. I was speaking recently and gave the example of my niece and nephew, and they're only very young, sort of 5-ish or so, and they speak to me and look me in the eye and talk to me quite unquote normally. But frequently I'll go into boardrooms and speak to educated, qualified men and women, CEOs, professionals, doctors, etc., who can't look me in the eye, stammer when they speak to me, and don't know where to look because I have a disability. I'm in a wheelchair. And that to me is really telling that we have a lot of work to do about how we communicate, how society sort of views people with disabilities. We have a lot of work to do about how people with disabilities are generally seen. So that is probably my biggest challenge, I suppose, is social attitudes. Is when I do maybe enter the boardroom is being asked why I'm here. What are you here for? Are you looking for something? I'm like, no, I'm here to chair the meeting. Are you?
That's outrageous.
Those sorts of things.
So not your accounting or your getting your bookkeeping in place for tax time. Not the usual small business entrepreneurial challenge.
I outsource those things. I cannot.
That's what smart entrepreneurs do.
That's what you do.
Oh gosh,
play
I
your
cannot
strengths.
stand those things. All of those sorts of things. Definitely outsource. One of the things that I learned very, very early on was to outsource the things that you're not good at, and all of the accounting side of things is definitely one of my weaknesses. Apart from the walking and all of that sort of thing, accounting is definitely not my strong point. I'm better at some things, but yeah, accounting is not one of them. So that's outsourced.
I'm right with you there, Lisa.
I think you're not alone.
Yeah.
When you were kind of describing that moment of, being, going into a boardroom and going, no, I'm chairing the meeting, I guess there's that other layer of also being a woman in a boardroom where sometimes, you're in a room full of men. Do you think men with disabilities are more, when they're coming into an environment like that is it any easier for them, or do you think that there's that kind of double kind of that layer of, for you, or for women who have disabilities?
That's a really good question. To be honest, I'm not 100% sure.
I'm fully aware that when asking that question, you can't be a spokesperson for every person and for every every disability that somebody may have.
Really, really interesting question, and I suppose the whole issue of intersectionality is a really valid point. I'm not a person of colour, so I can cannot be sure how I would be received if I was also a person of colour, or if I was also this or that, or if I was a male. But no, I certainly take your point, but I'm not sure, to be honest.
Are there kind of tiers of prejudice? Do you know what I mean? Like, are some disabilities more acceptable to people than others? That's a very loaded question, I know, but
Yeah. It's a really good question. I'm glad you asked it. So I have visible and invisible disabilities. So if, I know your listeners can't see me, but I am in a wheelchair. But there are plenty of invisible disabilities that you can't see. But it's not my wheelchair that stops me from doing all the things that I do, running a business and et cetera, et cetera. It's all of my visible disabilities that stop me doing the things that I really, really want to do a lot of the time, the fatigue or the pain or something like that. I'm over 25% blind. I have epilepsy, chronic pain, and other things that really do slow me down and halt me. And that has meant I haven't been able to pursue some business opportunities from time to time. And all people see when they meet me is the chair. So it is unfortunate for me, or not just for me, but I know I was presenting with a friend of mine who has a brain injury as well, but he's not in a wheelchair, and he made the joke one day that I am quote unquote lucky because I don't have to justify my brain injury and why I forget things and have my symptoms and side effects and everything from brain injury. But he does all the time. He's having to say, "Oh, I'm sorry, that's just my brain injury," etc., because he just walks around like a quote unquote normal person. But there's nothing that anyone sees that would tell them that he has a disability, except that he appears to be this forgetful, lazy person to an employer, for example. He's just this forgetful, lazy person who's not showing up to work. But really, it's only because he hasn't got maybe a wheelchair or a mobility aid or something like I do, to say, no, I'm actually disabled. So it's really unfortunate that because he hasn't got that visible aid, that he's treated very unfairly.
I can imagine, and you must encounter this, and I think to kind of shift that conversation into the positives and what people can do to be really more cognizant of these issues is if somebody in terms of like empowering people who do live with disabilities who may not be as sort of as visible. I guess in terms of sort of empowering them to be able to have these conversations with employers and with other people that they're working with, so that there's more understanding there. I guess you'd probably encounter a lot of people who feel that they have to apologize for it all the time. How do we kind of shift it from being this apology to kind of have that understanding of, you know what, like I can bring a lot to this, but feeling that you can be confident enough in those spaces to go, this is my lived experience and this is what you can expect.
I think if the employer makes it clear from the outset that the door is open, so to speak, or we welcome. I'm just trying to think back to an email trail that was happening in a disability group that I'm in, and we were talking about this very thing, disclosing disabilities in the workplace setting. The issue is that a lot of people with disabilities won't necessarily. It's easy for me because I have a physical disability, and so there's no hiding from anybody that I've got disabilities. You see it, whether you like it or not. Even though I've got invisible disabilities too, I sit in a 14-kilo wheelchair, so it's there. But a lot of people with invisible disabilities won't come out straight away and say, yep, it's me, I've got one. They also won't know straight away what they need. So as an employer, you might say, I'm here, I'm whatever you want. But it might take the employee several months to actually work out what they need in that setting. So as an employer, don't be put off if the employee doesn't come out straight away and say, yep, this is exactly what I need straight away, because it might take them a few months to work out what they need. But just making it clear in whatever way you can, whether it's through email or some other way, that you are open to conversations.
Do you think, in a way, that might be a bit of the missing piece of the puzzle in some way when we're talking about diversity and inclusion, is that we talk this big game, but we don't actually consult with the people who are the diverse people and the people with the disabilities? Like, we need to be having more conversations with people with disabilities about how we can be more inclusive, whether that's with our language or with our business practices, or...
Oh, absolutely.
Is that what we need to be doing, and how can we do that? How can we get people thinking like that?
Always consult with the people with the lived experience. That in a workplace example, in a workplace setting, for example, that's really key, because each individual is going to have a different experience. So as an employer, you might say, well, Joe was in here last week or last month, our last employee, he was disabled and he needed XYZ. So our next 20 employees with disabilities will surely need the same thing. That's definitely not true. So it's really important to, in some way, seek out that individual case-by-case conversation with each individual employee. But as I said, give them time and space to know exactly what they may or may not need, and also they may or may not wish to disclose straight away, because it's up to them. Not everyone wants to disclose, I suppose. That's their prerogative. But back to what I said earlier, absolutely have the conversation with people's lived experience. It's like making a decision about women's rights with a boardroom full of men.
So you're talking about diversity and inclusion, and there's no representation from someone who has a disability. So do we need to be having those, like a separate board that's an inclusion board that can facilitate change? Or do we need more people with disability? Obviously we do, but on boards themselves. But would that kind of sidestep of an inclusion board be a good first step?
It would be a good first step. Anything is a good first step, but they could be on board. So rather than just a little advisory board on the side, why can't they be on the board instead?
Yeah, why can't they? That's exactly right.
Why can't they? I'd imagine there's also, I think, because we've talked a bit from the employer's perspective, but from the employee's perspective, you have to have this sort of courage that, to be able to speak up, which is, and as you've sort of said, Lisa, like, not everybody has that courage, and a lot of people just want to get on with their job. No one wants to be seen as a label.
Sure.
You want to be seen as, I am a fantastic copywriter. I'm here to do a job and
absolutely.
to use my brain and to do the thing that I am paid to do. I do not want anything to be seen as an impediment to that.
Sure.
So what about the courage that it takes for those for people on the other side?
Sure. I guess with the whole label thing, it's not a matter of getting a label. It's about getting the right, whether it's equipment or support or assistance. That's what it's about. So it's not so much about putting up your hand to get a label. It's about putting up your hand to get support.
As someone who is a change maker, you're a voice for change, how do you make sure that you're getting support? Because you're always out there supporting everyone else and being the rah-rah rally pep talker and fight, fight, fight. What's happening for you? How do you get the support you need?
I keep really good people around me, not just yes men and women, not just yes people who will say, yeah, Lisa, we love what you're doing. People who will call me on my shit and go, that's terrible, Lisa, don't you ever say that. And blow smoke at my ass. But just really good people who will, online and offline, because I can't always get out and about. So and that's family and friends who will just have quiet times with me. It's not always, there's some really, really fun times, but it's not all the highlights reel at events and things. There are certainly some really awesome times and things that happen in my life, and I'm very, very lucky and privileged and honoured to attend those things, but it's not all that. So I'm grateful for the people that are around me for when I come crashing down from those, because I generally do, my fatigue kicks in and I come crashing down.
What can we do to promote more opportunities for people who are living with disabilities to run their own businesses and thrive like you do?
Excellent question. Thanks, Adam. I think if we can support the businesses that do exist already. So there are some great small businesses out there run by people with disabilities, whether that's supporting them as part of your business, giving them shout outs on socials or things like that, and inviting them to your events and asking them to be part of whatever sorts of things of things that you're doing, because showing that there are really great people in business with disabilities is something that I'm really passionate about showing in this space. There are some great people out there.
Mm-hmm. And you can't be what you can't see, that old
Exactly.
adage. All right, I'm afraid that's all we've got time for. So thanks for joining us, Lisa. We love chatting with you on First Act. And you can find out more about Lisa, book her for a speaking gig, buy her book, or maybe get her to write a bit of cheeky copy for you. I don't know if she still does that, but maybe she does.
Yeah, for sure.
At lisacox.co. And that's Cox with a COX. Or follow her on Instagram at lisacox.co.
Thanks, Lisa.
Bye.